He's a columnist with the Denver Post. Sean Keeler joins us, Sick on 365 Radio and 365 Sports. We appreciate his time. He wrote a column, a suggestion, a nudge, Colorado, with what's going on. Sean, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. When you heard about USC and UCLA leaving, did you think this was imminent, that Colorado might be involved in going back somewhere, or what were your thoughts?
I think everything's on the table when that happens, isn't it? We got sort of desensitized, I guess, for it with what happened with OU in Texas a year ago at this time, where that's the one that made everybody stand up and go, what? But I guess if I'm a child of the Big Eight. I've been either covered or been a part of the Big 12 most of the last 25 years, off and on in print. So that saga, nothing surprises you when you watch what happened with the Big Eight in the Southwest Conference, obviously. But you see leagues like the Big Ten and Pac-12/10, as you know, are different. They take their history probably too seriously, for lack of a better word, in those relationships and those traditions, I say in air quotes. So to see USC leave, given that they floated that of being like, hey, we're the Notre Dame of the West, maybe we need to do what we want. They put those feelers out before the pandemic, But to see the two of them go in tandem and to the Big Ten, where your nearest geographic partner would be 1,500 miles and 6 states away, I think that was more shocking than what OU and Texas did, just given their respective histories out west. Yeah, so when that happens, everything's on the table. Nothing would shock me anymore. So why not go back? Why not even consider it? And clearly I'm in that camp.
Sean, I guess one of the questions overall that Colorado has to ask itself is, what in these last 10 years has the Pac-12 benefited them?
Yep, that's exactly right. And they'll say academically, they'll say financially, but we did a series on this during the pandemic on the 10-year anniversary of, you guys remember the chaos of a decade ago, as do I. I was in the Iowa and Nebraska side of it, and it was bonkers. I'm watching CU leave the Big 12 then was bonkers. Watching the split of all those ex-Patriot schools was bonkers. But they were promised more money. They were promised a network on par with the Big Ten network. They were promised academics on par with what the Big Ten was doing. And everything was supposed to be an upgrade. And other than a little money early on, other than the money, it was kind of like a bad property deal. They got a lot of money up front, and then it just started waning. The returns on those 10 years got worse and worse and lower as it went along. So what did it do for them? It got them in front of a lot more of their alumni. I'm sure you guys know, and I've come to learn since working in this market, that CU is essentially a part of the University of California system in terms of its students and undergrads and its culture, as much as it is a part of the old Big Eight and the old Big 12, obviously. But boy, beyond that, other than academic prestige, which I also say in air quotes, and the faculty pushing that and getting in front of boosters, that's about it. Because for any other sport, I can't see, including especially the two major ones in football and men's basketball, I can't see where it's done them a lick of good. Not one.
Sean, one of the things a year ago when the latest, of course, as you mentioned, brought up in Texas and Oklahoma prior to the USC-UCLA, is when that happened, we got the feeling, and not just because we do a talk show, but it just kind of seemed like the Pac-12 and their members were kind of like scoffing. We're not looking at you. And of course, it's interesting how the tables turned. Did you sense that as well? And do you sense now, and I know there's some Pac-12 schools that think the Big 12 is garbage, for whatever reason, politically, religious, academic, whatever. Did you get that impression as well?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, it's the community college conference. And I say that as a child of the Big Eight, who, full disclosure, is a Northwestern Big Ten alum. So hey, I've swam with all sharks. I've seen the water in both ponds. which is also shocking to me that the Big Ten would, given its long-standing, you're our West Coast cousins partnership with, the Rose Bowl and the Pac-12, that they just openly kneecapped them like that, which, to be fair, it was. Look, let's be honest about what this is, too, and I'm sure you guys have talked about this. Television is driving this train.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, ESPN got the SEC rights en masse, and got total control. Well, what can we do to make this more appealing? Oh, well, these brands, what football brands are out there? There's Notre Dame, there's Texas, there's OU. Oh, you think Texas and OU would leave? Well, let's see. There we go. Okay, ESPN just upped their package something fierce. We've got bargaining coming up. The Big Ten's got to go back and redo their TV deals for whatever, a 5 to 10 year span. Gee, what would work now? Notre Dame. Well, we've tried that for 120 years. They've never built the girl we've been chasing for a century. The love affair that's never requited. She'll never say yes. Okay, what's our next best option? Well, we wanted Texas forever, and they did. The Big Ten always has had Texas on the radar for a lot of reasons. Well, they're taken. Oh, what's our next best bet? Well, SC may go independent. They've floated that, and Mike Bone, their AD, says they'll try anything. And here we go. Fox went, oh, well, how about this? We can be, we're in LA. We'll get this to work out. Your deal will be better. We'll get most of your rights moving forward, and our money will go up if we can get the Big Ten network in the second biggest TV market. We can't get into Dallas-Fort Worth, but hey, we can get into LA, even better from a penetration standpoint than Rutgers got you into New York or Maryland got you into D.C. How does that sound? Everybody went, yep, good. And nobody thought, wait a minute, what is this going to cost? Nope, good, great. And away they went. So, it's nothing. Again, it goes back to nothing. Everything's on the table, isn't it? It just feels like nothing shocks me anymore. Well, we're just gonna draw things up the way that a TV executive would draw things up, and just take logic out of the equation.
Sean, what do you think that the most reasonable end game is, given the fact you just mentioned LA is gone? You can't replace that. And, comparative, Rutgers into New York, Maryland into DC, just like Cal and Stanford into San Francisco, and probably CU into Denver a little bit. Those things, the Arizona schools into Phoenix, might be a little overestimated when it comes to concentrated fan enthusiasm in pro sports market. So is the best thing for schools like Colorado, Utah, to dive into a league that is driven by college sports markets, more or less?
I think it can't hurt. I can't speak for Salt Lake City as much as I can for here now, being here for 4 years, watching it from afar and then being here up close. The Buffs have kind of slid down that pecking order quite a bit. And having lived primarily in Big 12/Big 8 and Big 10 markets most of my professional career before moving here, it's very different. College basketball has no presence in Denver, which would shock you given how good, and is more impressive and should impress people given how good Colorado and Colorado State are respectively, and their coaches, because this is a terrible college basketball market. And it's been a pretty good college football market, but not the last decade. I think it can't hurt. I think it can't hurt to the point that I raised in the column as well. Another thing going for the Big 12, and even though I kind of raised my eyebrows at it at the time when West Virginia came aboard, because obviously geographically that's not quite the wacky wild card that the Big Ten just did. But yeah, it's not Big 8 country, let's be frank, or as Southwest country. But I understood, someone explained to me later, it was a television decision. I got to know Chuck Ninus, obviously, who helped put that together. And he said, you know how many TV sets are on the East Coast and how many people want to watch games at 5 o'clock Central and 4 o'clock Mountain? And suddenly the light bulb went on where, okay, I get that now. And the latest expansion has only enhanced that. So I think, given that CU has tried 10 years of basically being, off in a corner, where being in the Pac-12 is further, you feel like a flyover area anyway in the Mountain Time Zone collegiately, but instead of feeling more a part of the national scene, you basically pigeonholed yourself further with a Pac-12 network that got no distribution and none of those promises. I mean, it was just a scam on Larry Scott's part. Let's be real about what that was. Awful stuff. Presidents who made terrible decisions, and a commissioner who basically took the money and ran. That's how that story will be written. It's not quite a Ponzi scheme, but it's awfully close with what it did. And that's some of the discontent that UCLA and USC had too, was they looked at this and went, we could do way better than this. And I think Oregon and Washington probably feel the same. So I think it can't hurt you to look east and look south and look at a conference, unlike the Pac-12, that is thinking national. That is not just thinking provincial. You've got a provincial interest, but if you've got a national package and a national way to reach out to people, I don't see where that's going to hurt, especially when you already have a school with a lot of California kids. From a recruiting standpoint, someone wiser than I who's lived here a lot longer said, CU used to sell California kids on a league they never got to see and a campus they never got to see, and Texas kids on the mountains and Louisiana kids on the mountains and stuff that was unusual. It wasn't unusual anymore. They were seeing it all the time in the Pac-12. So I think maybe a little distance from that can't hurt them in any way, because being in the Pac-12, to you guys' point, for the last decade, from a football competitive standpoint, sure as heck hasn't helped.
Sean, as you said, everything's on the table, and it's kind of hard to figure out what's what all the time, which is everything that's flying around. But there has been the at least the mention floated of, in order to keep Washington and Oregon happy as the two top brands, although, you think that they'd be in the Big Ten by now, although Notre Dame, like there's this whole thing. But if Washington and Oregon were to get some unequal revenue sharing to stick around and keep this bad boy intact, how do you think Colorado and others would feel about that?
I think they publicly say we are united and in perfect lockstep with continuing our partnerships, and privately some of those ADs and coaches would hate it, even though they know that's going to be part of the game, because they hated it in the Big 12.
Right.
That was always one of the big political reasons for that shakeup a decade ago, was everyone got tired of Texas and Oklahoma, and especially Texas, dictating terms. That's why when they go to the SEC, that's going to be fascinating to watch from afar. Because, as you guys know, I don't think Nick Saban and anybody at Bama or Florida or Georgia is going to give a rat's patootie what Texas wants or cares about to that point. So, yeah, it's going to be a different, and I'd say a more uncomfortable political situation, because let's also be real. If the Big Ten would change its mind, or the network would tell the Big Ten that this is in your financial interest, because we're getting the line now, the insiders in Pac-12 say, well, they're sticking around because, it's so expensive to fly to the Northwest, and it's cost prohibitive relative to what the Seattle market gives you, and Portland is too small. Yeah, okay, fine. Yes. But at some point, you've got to find a way to make UCLA and USC more regionally cohesive in some kind of arrangement there. And that's not with Nebraska and Iowa. I'm sorry. I'm from there. That it doesn't, different culture there. Doesn't quite fly. It does, but it's expensive to fly there. So at some point, you'd have to think that they're going to come around, or ESPN says, you know what, the ACC network could use some different branding, and Notre Dame isn't going to play ball the way we like. And if we, and if South Carolina doesn't want, it's going to keep fighting to keep Clemson out of the SEC, maybe the ACC network needs to go national and pick up the San Diego and the Portland and the Seattle markets. Again, somebody's going to do that, aren't they? I mean, we're teetering towards this where geography no longer matters for anything, and we're teetering towards, and let's not, I don't want to make this a soccer conversation necessarily, but watch the Premier League, watch what happens there, because that's the closest thing to a North American sport, is the colleges with European soccer, where there's such financial inequity. There's no caps. There's no rules. There's no limitations. Ultimately, I think my fear is that there's going to be a split of the Power Five into a Premier League kind of thing, where here's 40 teams that have the biggest NIL pots or the best TV brands that get divided by one of those ways. And another 25 to 30 that used to be born into a lot of good money, your Oregon State, your Purdue's, maybe even your Northwesterns, are told, good luck to you, it's been great, and that middle class is going to go away. That's my fear, and I worry that could be in the next 15 years where we're going to.
Yeah, and by the way, Sean, we had Chuck Nidus on today's show, and of course he gave us a lot of his feedback and opinion, and he's totally against what you just mentioned, and I think I am, and not everybody is. The ones who know they got a seat, they're
Alabama
fine.
fan, Alabama fan doesn't care.
Texas are all for it.
They're fine.
Premier League.
So
Great,
if you were to poll, in your opinion, Colorado fans, not the administration, or maybe you can even add, what would they want to do if, in fact, they have an opportunity, if, in fact, whatever you see or read or hear, and we are kind of on as well, what would they want to do if, in fact, the Big 12 said, come on?
Come back. This is the fascinating part. You guys are going to love this. I would say the fan base would be 60-40 Big 12, and maybe even higher. They feel burned. They were duped. They feel duped by the Pac-12. Like this, they feel like redheaded mountain step cousins. It's not been good. The fans don't like the Pac-12. They don't care about Utah. It's been great for Utah. They've run it up CU's backside. They've turned into a really nice program. They're probably one of the next 4 biggest brands in terms of football quality in the Pac-12. It's been the opposite of the effect that it had on the Buffs. But here's the kicker. I think the administration is 70-30 Pac-12. They want the money, they want the comfort, they want the politics, they want the caviar, and they want, they want the prestige. Air quotes again. They want that prestige. The Big 12, to the administration at CU, is a JUCO league. They don't want to be in that. And the fans absolutely do, given those stories. Now, the one thing they would both agree on, and, no offense to anyone in Big 12 country, they'd understand, is if the Big 10 called them, done deal.
Oh, yeah. No.
Yeah. But they would understand that.
Any team that got a call from them or the SEC,
Hey, Baylor gets a call.
Now it feels like a foregone lottery ticket that if you get one of those big two, it's like, Iowa State, whoever's like, I get it. I suck.
Absolutely.
Get it. Yeah, but there's a lot. See, that's the division. And what you have there in the Big Ten, Illinois is one of the most fractured fan bases and fractured administrations in the Big Ten, which is one of the reasons they can never get football straight, from a distance. Trust me. That's one of the reasons. CU is becoming that. Colorado is becoming that, where your fans want this group of vote donors want this group of the administration want this. The majority of fans would love to go back to the Big 12 culturally, historically, especially fans over 35, 40, who remember and go all the way back to the Big 8 days. But your biggest donors who aren't in the greater Denver, greater Boulder area are in California. That's a tricky balance there, and they haven't found it. They just haven't. And so you get stuck, and then if you stay where you are, you get disinterested fans and bad coaches. They've got a rough schedule this year, guys. It's going to be got TCU right out of the chute.
Yep.
That if they don't win that one in the home opener, just for fun, pull up Colorado's schedule. You find me 4 wins there, and I'll buy you a Whataburger.
Well, the reason they don't have one that's automatic, and Sean, I'm a lifelong Nebraska fan, and believe me, it's been painful for them too. They don't have Scott Frost to beat in the last minute of the game like they did. God,
and you know what? And as a Western Iowa native who grew up with a lot of Nebraska fans, has many friends who are big red types, and I imagine you'd say this too. It has been great. Now, here's the difference of their marriage to the Big Ten. Is it's been financially and exposure, everything that we're promised, right? They've gotten the money eventually. They've gotten that kind of time, but it has not helped the football.
No.
They're without an identity. They're just Purdue West. They're just nothing.
Yeah.
They have a cultural issue. That's a whole nother show.
Yeah.
And I could give you 6 hours of radio on what happened in Nebraska football in the last 25 years. But I would contend, too, that both those programs and teams need each other right now, and they're not going to find each other because Nebraska also would be crazy to say, it's like, we'll go back to the Big 12. And I go, no, they want the money, and they're going to keep the money and say, we're just going to keep recruiting Ohio and Michigan and getting our brains beat in by the Buckeyes, Wolverines, and no one will care. So they both miss each other. I think you're a big Red fan, and I think some big Red fans would even admit that to this day.
Oh, yeah, no question. Sean, hey, appreciate it. Sean Keeler, Denver Post, appreciate your column. We'll be in touch. We'll see what happens here. Who knows over the next few days, maybe even weeks, that it's something pops, and we'll get you back on for your opinion. Thank you.
There you go. Expect the unexpected. Take care,
Sir.
guys. Thanks.
Sean Keeler, the Denver Post, with us on Sikkim 365 Radio, 365 Sports.